Roll the tape. What's up, everyone? It's Filmic Gaming. My name's Chris. I'm coming at you guys solo today. We do have our Hogwarts Legacy review coming out soon. I believe we're like about 50 to 75 hours each between me, Brendan, and Show. And that's gonna come out as soon as next week. We're still working on it. We want to get everything right for you guys. But today, I just wanted to, in the wake of The Last of Us show finishing just this past Sunday, and a lot of people have a lot to say about it, positive and negative. I'm more in the middle, but we'll go through a lot of that. If you guys enjoy the conversations, just remember to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you guys can get these videos. We're just gonna start off. We're gonna get right into it because there's a lot to talk about when it came to what HBO was able to do with The Last of Us. When it comes to executing the acting performances, whether it be it directing or the choices made by the actors themselves. If you guys listen to the Last of Us podcast, there's a lot of insight into the decisions that they made with the show that are really just planted on there. So if you guys ever have a chance, go ahead and listen to that podcast. There's a lot of good nuggets of information there. But we're going to start off with the first episode, which is by far my favorite episode of the entire series. I think that opening that they did, where they show the Dr. Newman, speaking in what seems to be a talk show and just explain to the public this very real danger of a fungal infection evolving or just sort of mutating with the rise in temperature of the planet, right? It's something that's so relatable to what's going on today because everyone wants to talk about global warming. So I just love the fact that they brought up the point of what if the temperatures in the world were to just rise by a couple degrees, That would then be enough for, cordyceps to evolve and now be able to thrive in the human body at higher temperatures. So I thought that was just, I set the tone perfectly for the entire show to really just show you what the premise of The Last of Us was. Because for everyone that played it back when it first came out, this whole idea of cordyceps, the thing that really grabbed everyone's attention is that when they searched up cordyceps, they saw it was real. Okay. So now we start off with the show. They start off with Sarah, right? And Nico Parker floored it. She literally just nailed the entire performance. I think that she was the perfect Sarah. As much as people didn't think that she looked like Sarah, obviously the curly hair is not Sarah, but I didn't really care about that. I think that when it came to Sarah, it was about the character and not the image. I think she nailed everything that had to do with being Sarah. The lovable personality, constantly quipping and saying jokes and I sell hardcore drugs, right? Like all of those things, like she really just nailed the persona of Sarah very well. And her chemistry with Pedro Pascal as Joel was just, what it needed to be to start off the show. So obviously it was really awesome to see her go through her day, go to school. These are all things that we didn't get in the game, right? See her go to school. She goes and, she goes to the neighbor's house, the Adlers, where we get to see what the neighbors were like. These are obviously different neighbors from the game. In the game, you end up going into the first floor towards the back. Joel comes in through the sliding door, says, "Hey, stay back there." An infected person comes in. It's one of the neighbors. Runs at Joel. Joel shoots him in front of Sarah. The way that they did it in the show, I believe, was impeccable. I mean, in order to really just say, all right, we're going to tell you this story, but it's not going to be the same as the game. We're going to change up things along the way that are going to sit with you differently if you've played the game, and they're going to sit with you strongly if you've never played the game and this is the first time watching it, right? So seeing Mrs. Adler in that one of those first scenes when Sarah goes over to her house and she's just in the background. A lot of people maybe didn't notice it, but she was twitching already in the background. So it seemed like whatever Mr. Adler was feeding her was already infected with the cordyceps virus and or with the cordyceps infection, and it sort of already was mutating inside of her body and taking control because of her weakened mental state. I think that that's one of the reasons why it happened so early for Mrs. Adler. There were a few questions out there of like, why would it appear so fast? In her, she had just eaten it. Well, she was in a weakened mental state. She was a lot older, so she's definitely easier for the cordyceps to take over. So that I thought that was really just unsettling when she was in the back with her mouth open and just twitching, kind of gave me it vibes. Um, I thought that it was really well done in terms of what they did with Mrs. Adler. And then, her running out, I thought the fact that she fell and broke her hip, what it seemed like, was hilarious in a way that the cordyceps doesn't have control over the body that it takes. It sort of, just infects the body, and they have to deal with whatever card they're given in terms of the condition, the age, the viability of the body that they get. This one wasn't particularly viable. It was probably a lady in her 80s, right? So it runs out the door, immediately falls and breaks its hip. So now it's just like crawling at you, and Joel takes care of business, right? To Sarah's shock, I thought that scene, the emotional impact of that scene was executed very well. And that's going to be a recurring theme of what we're going to talk about here, is how the emotional impact of certain scenes hit with the crowd compared to what original gamers saw with the game. Obviously, everything keeps going forward. You meet Tommy at this time, Gabriel Luna, who, again, if it's not the likeness, the face that matches, for some reason it's the voices that have been matching when it comes to the casting choices that Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, or the scouting directors, what casting choices they made. They really seem to hone in on the voices of these characters, really matching the voices from the game. So as much as Tommy to people may not have looked um as much, maybe as similar as Tommy did in the game, the voice was spot on. There were many times throughout the episodes where I would catch myself listening to Tommy, listening to Gabriel Luna be Tommy, and just really not even realize that he's not the exact same looking characters from the games, because the voice was there, and the that Texas voice was there. So it was really really cool to see that he was able to nail that part of it, and everything else just sort of fell in place for Gabriel Luna as being Tommy. So you leave the house, you're going on the road now, and everything from this point on is, compared to the source material, almost about 95% accurate, right? You're driving, you literally get the same sort of scenery that you got in the game, where you're sitting in the back seat and you're sort of going around, you're panning around, looking at the environment. There's the interaction with the family where Joel tells Tommy to keep going. We don't stop for anyone. If anything you guys want to comment on, feel free to throw it down there. I'll be happy to respond. Anything you guys maybe have heard in the podcast episodes or anything like that, feel free to let me know and be a part of the conversation. So it was definitely cool to see that burning house. You're driving by it, everything was pretty accurate, and immediately you already know what's about to happen, right? It's the Sarah death scene. So let's talk about this death scene. Um, Perfectly done. I don't think there was anything wrong with this scene. I think that it's one of the scenes in the show that actually showed the emotional impact that needed to be shown, between Joel and Sarah, and Pedro and Nico Parker. I think that Nico nailed what it was to be Sarah in that moment, right? That fear of something is wrong, something hurts really badly, and you might die, right? This isn't something that you might get out of. And no matter what, as much as you've relied on that rock that is your father to get you through everything in life, there is nothing that he can do to save you, because this pain is that bad, right? And Pedro Pascal, I loved what he did in this in the show, because it's a little different from the game, right? In the game, Sarah's laying down on the floor, and Joel focuses on applying pressure and stopping the bleeding, and he takes her hands and he says, "Put your hands here, push down, like, it's okay." It's constantly frantically talking to her, trying to calm her down. But in the show, you really get to see a different side of Joel that really just wants to help no matter what. No matter if it hurts her to lift her up and sit her upright, no matter if the blood isn't stopping, he just continues to pick her up, right? And he goes and he looks over to Tommy and says, "Tommy, help," right? But with a really just gut wrenching tone. And Tommy looks back at Joel and just says his name, as to look over to Sarah, and he looked back at Sarah, and Sarah's gone, right? So this was a definite change from the game that I thought landed perfectly with the audience and who I was watching the show with. They all said that they were floored by that scene, which is what, I wanted it to be. As a person who played the game, I was watching every scene and watching everyone who watched it around me and seeing if the moments hit them the way that it hit me, right? Because there were moments in the show where it didn't do that. But in this particular moment, it was done perfectly. And what a way to end episode one. And what a performance throughout the entire episode by the entire cast in that moment. So, episode one, claps all around. I gave that one a 10. I didn't think anything was wrong with that. So now we move on to episode two, right? And episode two really starts off with our first sort of glimpse into the unknown, right? Because this show, one thing Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, one of the things that they really wanted to do was use this new medium of TV to explore certain parts of the story that weren't explored before, right? So one of the things that they did in episode 2 was show us what it was like from the origin of the outbreak, right? Of outbreak day. And to see it from the perspective of this sort of scientist that is she works at a university. She's a professor of studying fungal infections and fungal, organisms. And she sees this person, this military personnel walking in and immediately just knows something's wrong. They take her over to this office, they show her, they say, "Hey, take a look at this cordyceps." And she's like, "Yeah, but why are you showing me this? It's just regular cordyceps." And the officer goes, "Yeah, but that's in a human." Immediately, she's like, "Hey, no, that doesn't exist in humans." And I just thought that this whole interaction was so cool because this is just something that we never got in the game, right? This is something that we always had to leave up to our imagination. Everyone who's a fan of games like these or projects like these, they always love when fans come up with theories or when anyone comes up with a great idea or that does it genuinely because it fills in the imaginary gaps that we've had with this game for all these years, more than a decade now of this game. And I just thought it was really well done for them to implement that little beginning section to explain what it was like for them to not only find the cordyceps in a human, but to realize that it had already gotten out of control, right? That thing, I don't remember the exact number, but they had mentioned how many of the workers were missing that they were not able to track down, right? That had gotten bitten possibly. So it was already out of control by the time they found it. So I thought that was really cool. So once you leave that, they take you into episode two. This boy just walks up on this Boston QZ, which is where they are, and he goes in. He gets taken in by the officers, and they immediately test him behind his back, see that he's positive for the cordyceps infection, and immediately, they tell the kid, "Hey, you know, you're gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be okay, right?" But what do you see eventually? You see what Joel has been subjected to doing. This is one of the things that we didn't get to see in the game, right? What were Joel's day-to-day activities like? While we do know that they had ration cards and they did black market things with that he did black market things with Tess for these ration cards. There's an interaction with an officer where he's giving them pills, right, for these cards and just trading, right? But we never really got to see these interactions in the game. So right there you get to see at the beginning of this episode, you see Joel carrying this boy's body they had just killed and throwing the body into a fire, and just that thud of the body hitting the fire was so impactful because the minute the thud happens you just see the dejection on Pedro's face. As he does it, he really just nails that feeling of what if you really had to do something like this? What if you really had to carry a boy's body who had just been killed? Probably countless times he's had to do it, right? He's sort of numb to it at this point, and he just throws the body into the fire. That really shows you what the world is like 20 years after the outbreak, in terms of, it's no nonsense place in the QZ. You know, if you're infected, you're gone. If there's an idea that you're infected, you're gone. If you're a detriment to the community and you're not productive, you're gone, right? There's so many things that are not normal, but that have become normal because of the world that they're living in. So I thought that was really special. And then, we're introduced to Tess. And Anna Torv did a miraculous job acting as Tess. I thought from the get go, she nailed the feeling of Tess. She was a very firm presence. She was very sort of in the know when it came to what was going on in the streets. From when you meet her to you guys meeting Marlene and Marlene passing on Ellie to you guys, to, in the end, when you get to the state house and, you've gone through the hotel scene with the clickers, right? And which was again really well done. When it came to the clickers in this show, they really nailed it. I mean, you could even see Bella Ramsey. She's been caught in interviews here and there, showing off her ability to do the clicker sounds. I can't do them, but damn, she's good. So it's really cool to see the way that they nailed the clickers. They got the sound down, and I don't think there were any problems with it. I think the problem that a lot of people had was that there weren't enough clickers in the show. There weren't enough infected at all, actually. There was really only a few episodes where they showed up, but it really just took away from the fear that they provided in the world. It's supposed to be a balance in a way of, the fear of people and the fear of infected, and how maybe sometimes the people are worse than the infected because they're sentient. Now, there's one change that they showed here, which I'm sure a lot of people, will talk about, and that's the change in terms of how the infected communicate with each other. So in the show, they have them as one big brain, one big connected brain. So if you step on a patch of cordyceps in one place, it will alert whatever 50 or 100 infected are attached to this cordyceps line. Um, Maybe a mile, 2 miles out, right? And they encounter this patch of infected out in the street when they're looking out from the hotel. And I thought that was really welcome, but they didn't use it enough. It really only showed. I mean, if you're gonna make a change that drastic, it would behoove you to maybe use that throughout the show as a problem, maybe that they have to encounter time and time again. But really, I think it only showed up once or twice in the show, in terms of them stepping on a patch, or it alerting some infected from far away. What happens when they reach the state house with the fireflies? They're all dead when they get there, right? And one of the dead fireflies wakes up, and it moves forward, and it touches a patch of cordyceps, and it immediately cuts to those 50, 60 infected that are like a mile out, and they immediately wake up and they start running, right? I thought that the way that it ended was one of the first times, the way that episode 2 ended was one of the first times where it was like, okay, that probably wasn't necessary, right? And that's the kiss scene. Let's talk about the Tess kiss scene, because that was one of the most awkward moments that I've ever had in the show. Honestly, I did not expect them to do it, and to see the tendrils coming out. Not, I get it. I get the reasoning for it, right? That is just this new form of the cordyceps, this new form of infected that they have for the show. That is just how they infect. They have the tendrils coming out of the mouth, right? And when you first saw the doctor in episode 2, at the beginning of episode 2, checking out this dead lady, she went to the mouth and she was able to pull out the tendrils from the mouth, which shows where it grows, which is where it starts, right? Because when you see the clickers, the plating comes out of the mouth and the center of the face. So obviously, after many, many years is when you get that. So it would make sense that these tendrils would be coming out of the mouth the way that it does in the show. But I thought that was a very, very awkward scene. You guys let me know what you think down below. Just my opinion. I didn't think that was necessary. I think it would have fit much better if it would have just been her fighting to the end, right? And going out swinging, the way that Tess should. So, all in all, episode 2, I think it was great. I think it did everything it needed to do. I think that very, very last scene with the Tess kiss was the only part I would have a gripe with. I really enjoyed the introduction of the clickers. I really enjoyed the introduction of the QZ, of what life was like, the little nuggets of information they gave us in terms of day-to-day life in the QZ, the negotiations with the officers, negotiations with other people within the QZ, and the relationship that Joel built with Tess. Right. We move on to episode 3, which is maybe the most controversial, but yet one of the more liked episodes of the entire show. Right. Naughty Dog is known for taking risks. Let's be real; they're known for doing this. They've done it. They did it in part 1. They did it in part 2. Um, that doesn't really matter here, right? They decided to tell a story between one of the characters that is one of the more liked characters in the game because of how blunt he is and how he kind of matches Ellie's fire, and that's Bill, right? We go to Bill's town in episode 3. We start off with a little walk by Ellie and Joel, and we get to see Joel really tell Ellie what happened at the start of the outbreak between, a lot of it got into food and flour, pancake mix, things like that. And then, by next thing you know it, Friday, September 2003, everything had gone to shit, and that was it, right? And then, she's going forward and she's like, "Hey, is this the way?" And he's like, "Oh no, let's go this way." She's like, "No, what's wrong? See, there's things over there you shouldn't see." She's like, "I don't care. I want to see it," right? Now, even though this is a new interaction, we know very well this is exactly how Ellie and Joel would have interacted in the game, right? This is how it would have been written, how it would have been done, right? Ellie would definitely want to go see, and Joel would be like, "God damn it," like, "All right, fine. Yeah, I told you no, but you want to see it." So they go and they see this field of dead bodies, and they sort of for the first time really get to see together the visceral nature of what humanity was at the outbreak, and the days after it, right? So these QZs really got filled up, and if there was no room, they just shot people and they just left them out to die, right? Which is a really, really crazy thing to show a child of Ellie's age, but she's seen her fair share by this point. By this point, she had already lost Riley, and she had heard her fair share at least, but she had seen an infected. I don't think she had seen anything like this, where the people who were killed weren't infected. Probably, they were just innocent. There was just no room. And as much as she's lived a sheltered life, it has come at the cost of innocent people, of innocent lives. Her spot in the QZ. So it put a lot into perspective for her. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a really good scene. Really fleshed out Ellie's character even more. Another opportunity to explore storylines that maybe weren't explored in the game. So from there, we get to Bill's town, and it immediately just, it cuts to Nick Offerman as Bill. And boy, oh boy, Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. What can I say? Just a masterful, masterful performance by those two. You probably, you can look at different love stories told throughout movies and things like that. You got, Fault in Our Stars. You got all these, The Notebook, all these random love stories that were out there that are, really cheesy, and some are really good. But this was really one of the first ones that I saw from beginning to end. And you start off, it's really, it's obviously it's something that's not for everyone, right? They are two men that fall in love, and it's something that a lot of people don't want to sit through. They don't want to watch, and they don't understand why this is there. But in terms of the goals that Neil and Craig Mazin had with this story, I think they accomplished them 100%. And that whole journey from Frank showing up in Bill's town as an outsider, to Bill taking him in, to Frank slowly winning him over, to Bill slowly feeling love for this person, to that love growing to a point where it becomes a reason to survive, right? The whole point of this episode was that the will to survive comes from the pursuit of love. If you don't have love, or you don't have something that you love or something that you care for, it's living without love is merely surviving. And they really nailed that premise in this episode. because Bill was this battle hardened person, right? Even in the games, he just rigged his whole town with traps and he's talking to himself, telling, gotta fix that fence on the outer edges of the city, like, you're so stupid, Frank. You're so stupid, Bill. Like, he talks to himself about other people and himself. So he's this battle hardened person that when Frank shows up really softens him, right? And in the game they do insinuate, they do say, they show it. I mean, Ellie grabs the magazine from his church room and she's looking at it in the car and it's a male magazine, right? Like they showed that Bill had an interest in men. When Bill sees Frank hanging in the house in the game, which is by the way, that's the way he died in the game. They didn't die together in the game. They were just estranged by the point you got to Bill in the game. Frank was on one side of the city and Bill was on the other. And they kind of stayed to themselves. They helped each other, but a lot of times they kind of stepped on each other's toes, which explains why when you see the truck that you try to get the battery from in the school, it's empty. You know what I'm saying? Frank took it. It was already in Frank's car in his house that he had hung himself in. So it was definitely something that was shown in the game, that there was an interest, there was a love interest there between Bill and Frank. He called him, he was his partner, right? You could say of what you will with that, but if you looked at it with what Ellie found, you already insinuate, okay, they had a love interest between each other, right? So this was an opportunity to explore that story and not be tied down to what the game had. This was just a chance to explore what the 20 years were like for Bill and Frank if they had fallen in love and stayed in love, right? And it was just riveting. I mean, we saw a side of Nick Offerman we've never seen before, from Parks and Rec or to other projects that he's done. We've never seen this soft side and this intense acting prowess of Nick Offerman in the way that it was shown here in The Last of Us. So from beginning to end, a riveting love story. And if you haven't watched it, I mean, just put your ego to the side, put everything to the side, and just watch it. And it's one of the best love stories you will ever see. Down to the very end, when Frank's deteriorating in health, and it just becomes something that he doesn't want to be a burden to Bill anymore. And as much as Bill doesn't care, and Bill wants to keep Frank with him as much as possible, there comes a point where Frank says, no more. I don't want to be this burden to you. I don't want to be someone that can't get up out of bed and take care of themselves and cook for themselves and do all the things that I normally do. He's tired, right? And I think that one line that Bill says to Frank is one of the most profound lines in the entire show. And he basically says, without you, I don't want to survive. You were it. You were what I was surviving for. And I'm going with you. And that moment right there really hit, because the whole time you're thinking, all right, Frank's like, we're going to do it this way and you're going to help me. Right. And does that scene of Bill crying when he finally realizes that Frank's really serious this time, and that this life that they've built together, this life that they've managed to hold together at the seams with their love, is crumbling down in front of them. It's over. That's a terrifying feeling. For a lot of people, the fear of dying is palpable, right? It's something that you never want to experience and you never want to think about, especially when you're young. But to know that your life is ripped from you and you end up, finding this love and it lasts 20 years, right? But it's about to end and you're about to have nothing to fight for and nothing to live for. That's where that emotion came from Nick Offerman. That's where he was able to dredge up that emotion in order to deliver one of the most powerful crying scenes I had ever seen, in a long time at least. It was very well done, and the chemistry between Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman was off the charts throughout the entire episode. They really just showed that they loved each other, not only as actors but as characters. They showed it to the point where it was believable and it was powerful for the audience that was watching it. Bravo to episode 3. Was it necessary to the story? Absolutely not. Right? I mean, it wasn't even it didn't even relate to anything. Like, right, Joel comes in and they have already passed, the letter that Frank Bill leaves Joel is very powerful because he finally gets to mourn Tess for the first time, right? Throughout the whole show, throughout the whole episode, their journey to Billstown, Joel never mourned Tess. He sort of just swallowed it and left and grabbed Ellie. I thought that was good, but I mean, from there you just move forward. It had nothing. You could skip the entire episode, and you wouldn't really miss anything. You'd miss the nuggets in the middle, in the beginning about what happened after the outbreak with the QZs, but you could skip that whole episode, and it really didn't matter. In the game, you go to Pittsburgh right after. From Boston, you go to Pittsburgh, and that's where you meet Henry and Sam, and that's where you meet, the Raiders or the Hunters, right? That ambush you. That all happens in Kansas City instead, and we get introduced to the people that are chasing Henry and Sam, which is another change that they brought up in the show, which I thought was very interesting and a cool idea because when you meet Henry and Sam, you're sort of just getting chased by randoms, that are just shooting people and all that. There's no real backstory to them that you get other than collectibles. There's no real backstory. So their introduction of Kathleen and Jeffrey Pierce playing Perry, which is the original Tommy from the game. That's Jeffrey Pierce. I thought that was really cool, and I thought that was something that they were right to explore. In terms of another change from the story itself in the game, that they were able to implement a character like Kathleen into the story so well. I thought that her acting was pretty good. I thought she nailed her role. It was a little bit cliche in terms of her being the bad person, right? Her being the prototypical power hungry, revenge ridden character that sort of has no mercy and sees things in black and white. There's no gray, right? I thought that was pretty cliche, but other than that, I thought the story was pretty effective. The first time they get into Kansas City and they get ambushed, and Joel's fighting off everyone while Ellie hides in the wall, and then Joel gets attacked, and you realize that he can't hear out of that ear, that right ear, um and he gets attacked from behind. Ellie comes out and saves him, and she shoots this person in the back, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. And it's really one of the first visceral scenes you get to see of Ellie hurting someone, right? Like, she's hurt a clicker before, she's hurt infected, but this is her hurting a person, right? And it really just shocks her to her core that she was even able to do it. But she had to save Joel. I thought the begging scene from the guy was hilarious. I mean, it's not hilarious, obviously, but I thought it was just crazy to see Joel just say, this guy just begging Joel, like, here, just I'll do anything here, just take my knife, do this and that. And then Joel tells Ellie, hey, go back in the wall. And he proceeds to stab the guy with the knife that he was begging him to take to let him go. That really showed, a vile side to Joel that he's had. And that we were really waiting to see, right? I mean, when we were in the game, that ambush was the real first time we got to see Joel go off and just, become protector, that in a game he takes a guy and he throws him onto a broken shard of glass in a refrigerator door, and it's like a huge sharp shard of glass that goes straight into the guy's neck. Really brutal. So to see this scene of him, shooting everybody off, and to see him off him with his own knife was something. And I thought that was really okay. That was gonna be the start of a really great season. As much as the other episodes were good, I was like, okay, if this is gonna be the Joel that we're gonna see, and this is how far they're gonna go with it, and how they're gonna be creative with his viciousness, I'm here for it, right? But this is also where things sort of tail off for me. I think that this is where there becomes a sort of sense of many things that were changed that weren't included in the story due to lack of space in the episodes. They only ordered 9. I don't know what HBO was thinking when they only ordered 9 episodes. whether it was budget or whatever it was. There's no reason why you don't give Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin 13 episodes. I mean, you give Westworld 13 episodes. You ran that for 4 seasons before you canceled it, but you can't give Last of Us season 1 13 episodes. You give them 9. Like you give 9 to like a limited series, man. Like what are you guys doing? I think that's a huge, huge mistake on HBO's part to only offer 9 episodes. It's ridiculous. And it was a detriment to the story. And I would have taken it as a slap in the face. But you don't believe in the show that you only want to order 9. You don't think it's gonna do that well, so you don't want to give so much, time to the show. I mean, come on. It wasn't enough episodes. When you meet Henry and Sam is deaf, which is something that was really just a great change. That connection grows so much more when you realize he's deaf. It adds so much to the protection factor that Henry has over Sam. I thought it was really well done, to add the sign language to it, to add the emotions that Kevon Woodard, who played Sam, was able to convey through the show. With sign language, it just added so much. It created a different dynamic between Ellie and Sam as well. Not being able to speak with each other in the traditional sense, but to speak with each other in the sense that they're both kids, right? They communicated through joy of being kids together. There's that time when they were in the sewers and they were playing, right? That was really, really cool and really, really nice to see the implementation of this new character's, sort of, disability um, into a character that we all kind of loved and we all really wanted to survive, right? But when you get into the sewers is really when things start to tear off because we get a glimpse of a character that was really I was just looking forward to with the way that they were telling all these stories off to the side of everything, exploring all these storylines that didn't get explored. I was really disappointed when they didn't include anything about Ish. I just didn't understand why all we got was a drawing. And then when you listen to the post show where they go inside the episode, Neil Druckmann just says, yeah, for players of the game, we had a picture there that, if you play the game, and in the game, you can pick up all these collectibles and you can do all these things. And like, I get it. You want to leave something for the game so they can go back and play it, right? You want to sell more copies. But I thought it was a disservice to the fans to even show Ish if you're not even going to mention him, right? Like, they literally just looked at a picture and they said, oh, that's cool. And I was just screaming. I was like, what? Like, that's Ish. Like, you guys are not going to talk to Ish. You're not going to show no background. You're not going to give us a cutscene with Ish or something. You're not going to give us, some type of backstory with him. It's maybe seeing him on screen, finding the family that was outside and convincing them to come in and maybe show their lives in the sewers a little bit and then show the breakdown and that scene where when you go into that room in the game and you see how they had to off the kids and you see the sign that says they didn't suffer and that really just morbid scene of those kids being under the blankets dead and this person that had to do it locked in this room while the infected were breaking down the door because one person made a mistake. Like, that breakdown, they needed to put that in the show. And all they gave us was a damn picture. I thought that was infuriating to me once the episode was over. I was like, you guys really just gloss over one of the most like sought after characters in terms of collectibles. Like, that was the one character that whenever anyone who found the collectible, they went around looking for the rest of that story because it was really a cool story. It was a great story told in the game. Did it break the episode? No, it didn't by far. The episode just still ended up being good. When you leave the sewers and they have the sniper scene in the suburbs, right? I thought that was really well done. It was just like the game. Then you go in and Joel goes and gets the guy and he gets control of the sniper rifle and he's looking, but then he sees, then Kathleen shows up, right? And Kathleen throughout the episode, has shown her dark side. She's killed people for not giving her information about where Sam is and Henry. And there's obviously the scenes where Henry and Sam were hiding out. there's many things that Kathleen was involved in where her scenes were pretty good, but there wasn't anything other than her being very unlikable, which is what she needed to do for the character. So Kathleen shows up out in the suburbs and, she does her thing. She gets Henry and Sam to come out. Henry, much to the dismay of Sam, he gives himself up. He says, "Okay, but you gotta let the kids go," right? And then you find out the reason for Kathleen's hatred, right? The decision that Henry made in order to help out Sam, where he killed someone very close to Kathleen. It was definitely an eye opener in terms of her motive for being how she is, and it really added depth to her character. You know, so it was really good to see that. But I thought it was satisfying that she got killed by a child clicker. And another thing I wanted to really bring up was just that scene where all the infected came out of the ground, of this nest in the ground, and then the bloater comes out, right? And I loved how the bloater killed Perry just with the same animation as the game where he just rips the jaw off, right? And you just see it grab him blindly and just grab at the jaw and rip the top half clean off, just like in the games. When you get called by the bloater in the game, in the gymnasium, he grabs you and he starts reaching for your teeth in your mouth, and he gets in and he just opens up your head, right? I thought that was really well done, and I thought it was vicious and visceral and whatever it needed to be. And then for Kathleen to be get killed by that child clicker was just very satisfying. I thought that was, considering that it almost killed Ellie in the car, it was very satisfying to see that child clicker, get a hold of Kathleen. There were many points where I was like, why didn't Joel just shoot her? Right? He had the sniper there. He could have ended everything. Right? Yeah, it would have started a problem with everyone, but the infected were coming out. And he had an eye. He was aiming just fine. He could have just shot Kathleen right there, but it's just a directorial decision. So I guess they didn't want to do it. She needed to die this way. So all in all, that episode was good. I just think it was very disappointing. The fact that one, there were no clickers in the sewers. I thought that there should have been some sort of monsters in the sewers, right? They were all gone. Where did everybody go? Right? They just completely abandoned the story in the sewers, and it was just a place where people hid out for a little bit. And yeah, they had house rules, they had everything up, but they didn't add anything to that. And I thought that was a very missed opportunity, a sorely missed opportunity to tell a great story when it came to the character Ish and his survival group that he had in the sewers. We move on to Kin. Okay. And Kin is the episodes where, in the game you finally make it to Tommy, right? And you make it to Jackson, and you don't know where you necessarily are or where Tommy is, but you run into this group of people, and they sort of, in the game there's a gate there at a dam, and you kind of get greeted by everyone, and Tommy's right there, and he sees Joel and he's like, wait a second, it's my goddamn brother, and they see each other and they embrace. But I thought that the way it was done in the show was better in terms of how they found them, much more believable in a way. I thought the scene where they met the couple in the shed and they were, acting all weird, and they were telling them, never go across the river or never go north because, there's people out there that'll kill you, Ellie says, "You're not scaring me." Well, the lady goes, "Well, I scared him." And Joel's visibly, shaken up by everything, but more so from a sense that, he doesn't know how much longer he can last protecting Ellie. He feels like he's messed up so many times, right? And that's the real premise for this episode in Kin. Um, I thought the best part of this episode was when Joel finally shows his pain of losing Sarah and what it's done to him, and the nightmares that he has, and the fact that he sees himself slipping in terms of being a protector and being a smuggler. He's not as effective. He can't hear out of his right ear, and he's constantly about to die. And he got saved by Ellie. She had to kill someone. She had to paralyze someone in order to save him. So it was definitely a powerful scene to see Pedro really take that on and just show the softer side to Joel. Show that even though Joel is this badass, this guy who's battle hardened, At the end of the day, he's experienced trauma. You know, he's experienced pain and loss on a level that not many people have, and endured and still survived for 20 years after, right? So he's been dealing with this for such a long time, and he's tired by this point. You know, he sort of just doesn't know what to do anymore, and he doesn't want to be the person that has to lose someone in his care again. He lost Tess, he lost his daughter, he's probably lost countless others over the 20 years, and he just doesn't want to do it anymore. So he wants to pass on Ellie to Tommy, right? And like I said, you know, when you meet this group of people, and you're walking into Jackson, it's Maria that greets you with a group of people, and you first get to see another casting change in terms of Maria in the game, and I thought it was still nailed perfectly. I thought that in terms of casting with Rutina Wesley, right? I thought she was a great actress for Maria. I thought she really nailed, you know, that rock that Tommy needs, right? Tommy being a softer person, personality wise. He's done his fair share of horrible things, as you see with the conversation between him and Joel, where they talk about those 20 years that they had to survive together, and you know the terrible things that he and Joel had to do, but they had to do it to survive, right? So I thought that, you know, she nailed the type of character that Maria needed to be for the show, because again, the likenesses aren't the same, but the character, the person that they portray, the person that envelops them while they're in the show, they're executing it so far with each casting. They've executed it perfectly. From Henry, Sam, to Tommy, to Maria, to Kathleen, to Sarah, to Joel, right? To everyone that they've met along the way, to Tess. Everything has been nailed. As much as they may not look the same age, they may not look the same as this, they may like look like the same person or the same ethnicity. It doesn't really matter, because they've been able to nail the likeness of the characters in a different way in terms of how they are on screen. So I thought that Rutina Wesley did a great job as Maria, and you know that conversation that she has with Ellie, where she's telling her like, you know, Joel, you shouldn't trust him, right? And then she quips back at her like, hey, well, why should I trust you? You know, like I'm sure you've done your fair share of bad things. He's just protecting me, and he's only protected everyone that he's been around. So I don't see anything wrong with Joel. So you know they kind of move from there, but you really kind of get a sense of the rushed feeling that the episodes are starting to get with Kin. I thought that it was just really too rushed. I thought they rushed through the meeting with Tommy for the first time. They just had that really nice embrace, but then, you know, they have that quick conversation. Joel talks about his pain, it moves on. Then they rush into the scene where, you know, Ellie and Joel are in the house, and you know Joel puts out "You're on the mighty." He pulls out "You're on the mighty thin ice" line, right? And it just kind of really just doesn't doesn't sit well with me when he delivers that line, and when Ellie starts acting through that scene as well. As much as they want to diverge from the source material in terms of how the acting was, they kept a lot of it the same. But it was one of the first scenes where while I was watching, I was like, "Oh, that's, you know, that's nice," you know. But if you play the game, you would see like that the game is way better. You know, like the way the game hits. Like I could watch the scene from the game 20 times, and it still would hit good. You know, it still would be a great scene. I wouldn't get tired of it. But I watched the scene in the show where, you know, Ellie and Joel first had that tense conversation in the house, and Joel says, you know, "Yep, I'm not your dad, and we're going our separate ways," right? It kind of just doesn't hit the same. This is really the first time where you see that these guys, you know, it's not Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson up there acting, you know, it's Pedro and Bella, and a lot of it, you know, it has to do with the fact that this is the first season, right? Whenever you get a show and you're in the first season, you really can't expect the acting performances to be top notch. Usually, when you're watching a show and you're into it, get to the third, get to the fourth season, even the second season, possibly. But as you get deeper down the line, the actors really become the characters a lot more, and the acting becomes a lot better, right? So, you really got to give them a chance to sort of grow into these roles. There are going to be certain points where they're sort of seem like they're struggling with it, or they seem like they're trying to force this emotion, but it's just not there. Joel nailed this performance. Pedro nailed this performance more so than Bella Ramsey did, but they both had their moments where they were really effective and being the characters. But I just thought that Kin really rushed through a lot, and then you end up going, you leave that scene, you end up going to State University of Colorado, to University of Colorado, and you end up, finding the group of raiders there that come at the same time while you're searching for the fireflies. And instead of Joel falling from a balcony onto a rod, a steel rod, right, of concrete rebar that's sticking out of the ground, Joel gets stabbed, right, in the same area, right, stabbed pretty bad where he's bleeding. It's in an area where he's gonna bleed a lot, and he struggles to really get through that moment. Again, it's another scene that just doesn't hit the same as the game, right? As much as you think that he's in bad shape, doesn't hit as much. I mean, I get it. It's super unrealistic for anyone to survive what happened to Joel in the game, right? To be pulled up out of the rebar to then walk all that distance and still be able to shoot and be conscious for all that time while you get on the horse and then survive. Yeah, I don't think it's realistic. So they definitely took a more realistic approach with the show. If you've never played the game, it'll shock you. It's gonna do its job, right? But as a player of the game, it just didn't hit. But you get to the same situation where Joel gets on the horse. They ride away. They finally get away. Ellie does her thing. She kills a few people. And then they get to a point where Joel can't ride anymore. He falls down, and that's where the episode ends. She says, "I can't do this without you." That whole scene. So they just rushed through that whole thing. I think that could have been stretched out over 3 episodes. An episode of meeting Joel and Tommy, right? And activating the power or something like that. Do something along those lines to have them meet and have that conversation. Delve into the 20 years a lot more. We wanted to hear what happened in the 20 years more than what was said in the show. We wanted maybe a flashback of something Joel did, a flashback of something that Joel made Tommy do, right? In their survivor years. Like they had this idea of running along that they were going to explore storylines that we didn't get to see in the game. And I thought that this was a prime opportunity, another one to explore more storylines. And they just glossed over the entire thing. I mean, they glossed over what was probably like 5 hours, like 4 hours of gameplay. Nah, maybe not. They glossed over what was like 3 hours of gameplay, 3, 4 hours of gameplay in the game. They glossed it over in an hour, an hour, a little under an hour. And it just felt really just rushed and really cheap by the time you finished, because it was blazing through everything, and you knew that this story was coming to a climax now, and that it was going to end soon, right? We were already on episode, I think, 6 or 7 by this point. And you're just along for the ride. You're like, all right, this is where we're at, right? And then we get to the next problem that the show had. When it came to Left Behind and showing the story of Ellie and Riley, I thought Storm Reed was great as Riley, right? I thought she really, personified that boyish persona that Riley had, on top of being a figure that, Ellie really looked up to and that really admired, and that was the best friend of Ellie, right? And that Ellie really loved. I thought their chemistry on screen was really good. I thought that, they did a few scenes better than in the game just because of animations and stuff. Like, the photo booth scene was a lot better. I thought that was really cool. I thought the design of the mall was amazing, and everything that they did in there was really cool. I thought the addition of the arcade scene was really awesome. There's nothing better than seeing some old school Mortal Kombat 2 being played. Um, by Ellie and Riley, and they're actually like into it, and Riley's a badass at it, and Ellie's struggling, but they still have fun with it. They still have the connection. I thought that was great. But it's another one of my main gripes is the fact that they dedicated a whole episode to this. I feel like this is something that they needed to add as a 10th episode, 11th or 12th or 13th episode in the season. Like, this isn't, when you have only 9 episodes, You can't dedicate a whole episode to the Frank and Bill love story and then dedicate a whole episode to the Left Behind DLC. I mean, when you have 9 episodes, you gotta cover the story of the game. And if you see that you're rushing through so many sections and that because of it, the acting performances seem to be kind of suffering because there are so many emotional moments that they seem like they kind of maybe took the third take. They took the fourth take. You know, they didn't take their time getting the emotion right, right? There were many scenes like that. And this was another one where a lot of people just felt like, and myself included, felt like it was unnecessary. And it didn't add anything to the story, especially for people who weren't players of the game, right? That know about Left Behind DLC. Like for them to be in the middle of that story, the way it ended with Joel, being hurt and Ellie panicking and not knowing what to do, for them to just jump back all this way to tell this story that really had nothing to do with the main plot and didn't further the story at all, other than provide some context to Ellie's thinking of why she doesn't want to leave Joel. It was great for players of the game, but it wasn't great for what the show was trying to accomplish. They only had 9 episodes. You can't dedicate 2 of them to this, right? That episode was fine. All right, Left Behind was fine. It got, I believe it got like a 9 out of 10. So on most things, so it did what it needed to do. It told a great story. It had great chemistry between Riley and Ellie, and you really get to see, obviously, first time Ellie's love interest and what happened, right? And what happened in that fateful night when she first got bit, right? It gives you context. I just don't think it was necessary when there were only 9 episodes. From there, obviously we jump into what was my second favorite episode of the whole show, which was episode 8, which is the episode with David, right? David and his cult. We get to see Troy Baker for the first time as James, as David's right hand man, right? And I thought this episode was really well done. This was an example of where they were able to explore and they took advantage of exploring a storyline that we didn't get to see, which was what was David's life like during and before Ellie and Joel meet up with them in the story where they clash. And you get to see the community that David has built. You get to see the people that he cares for. You get to see a little bit of backstory between James and David in terms of the doubt that David starts growing for this person that's been leading them this whole time. But now times are hard, and all of a sudden, all those beliefs you had, they don't seem so surefire, right? I thought that was great. I thought that Scott Shepard did an amazing job as David. Really nailed it. He didn't have the same voice, but his voice was still soft and unsettling, a little bit squeaky, right? Obviously, you can't beat Nolan North on his performance with David, but his performance was rather unique. It was more so unique than very special, right? The fact that they took the whole episode to tell this story of David, the fact that David got his own episode was awesome. I mean, this was the part of the show that really was gonna hit, right? This was the one that, other than the first episode, there wasn't really much anyone was really looking forward to. In that scene when Ellie got her kill on and she was able to just hack away at David, right? But you got the whole story. Just seeing it unfold on the big screen for everyone to see this what seemed like a peaceful community slowly diving into desperation, where to the point where they're eating stuff that they know doesn't taste right and they know might be wrong, but they're hungry, so they need to eat. People are disappearing and they don't know where they're showing up. But all of a sudden, there's still more meat in the fridge. I thought we ran out of meat almost a week ago. I'm sure those people were thinking that because they was like, how are we still lasting? Where's this meat coming from? And where's this one member of our community? He's gone. And obviously we get to see what happens. They're becoming cannibals. They're starting to eat their own. They're weak and they're sick and they're dead. They're starting to eat them. And do they want to? No, but they have to survive, right? And it seems like Ellie and Joel are just the latest in the long line of people that they're gonna go ahead and give that fate to, right? They're looking for Joel. Joel wakes up from his slumber after getting medicine from David, through Ellie. Um, And he finally wakes up out of his slumber, kind of like Goku getting out of the restoration chamber in the show. He comes out, he struggles a little bit, he kills that guy in the basement. He's really out of breath, but he gets himself together, he gets upstairs. But it all culminates obviously in the scene where David gets a hold of Ellie, and they've been struggling in the restaurant, right? He locks the door, the restaurant catches on fire a little bit, right? And we get to the scene where Ellie kills David, right? And this is the one scene in the episode that I had one problem with. Now, it was still great, right? It was still good. We got to understand it won't be exactly like the game, but I didn't like the fact that Joel didn't stop Ellie mid-kill in the restaurant. You hear the Last of Us podcast and they say that they made that change because they didn't think that it was feasible or was possible for Joel to show up and to get into a burning building in time to stop Ellie from killing this person, right? But that's not the case. I mean, if you look in the game, the windows are fine. I mean, you break a window, you get in. There's the window right there, right? And when you walk out of this shed or this area where they were holding the bodies and the bodies of the people that they were eating, Joel sees the restaurant right there, and it's not all on fire. It's only a small portion of the restaurant that's on fire. So it was perfectly feasible for Joel to be able to get into the building. If he sees Ellie hacking away, he's gotten into the building already. He's probably, crouching, looking around, and he hears Ellie just hacking. He probably just gets up and runs at her, hearing her, screaming and slicing away at this person. And he stops her in time, right? And this is something I said on the Instagram. If you guys haven't followed the Instagram page, go ahead and follow it, filmic_gaming. We put a lot of our smaller highlights, a lot of good snippets of our analysis there. It just hit better in the game when he interrupted her mid-kill. The fact that, while she's doing it, the music is all broken. And then when he embraces her, it just sort of gets really smooth. And you really just see the calmness that Joel brings to Ellie when he finally gets a hold of her. And the fact that, he caught her, she got to kill David. Then she got to walk outside all, shocked and everything. And then he approaches her. That scene, like it's just the emotion on Joel's face in terms of Pedro just didn't hit. Like it wasn't as powerful. He wasn't as worried as Joel was in the game, And I get it. It's Troy Baker's performance, but it's not something that you can just say, oh, I want it to be different. No, man. Like this was a moment where you had to stick to the source material. And I thought it was a directorial decision that they could have done without. I don't think they needed to change anything. I think they should have had Joel get into that restaurant, be it if he broke a window with a brick or a bottle like you do in the games in part 2, or whatever he needed to do. It would have been pretty easy for him to get into the restaurant and, see Ellie hacking away at this man and stop her. It would have been so much more powerful for the audience. By the time it was done and they walked away, I was watching with a bunch of friends and my wife, and they were just like, they weren't floored by it, And as a player of the game, that was a problem for me because that was a part of the game that floored me. It was just, I was in complete shock with the viciousness of what Ellie did, which I was in the show. But then to see Joel just grab her like, hey, Ellie, it's me, while she's doing it, like, stop. It really it pulled you out of the situation with Ellie into Joel's arms, right? As much as you're in that moment with Ellie and she's hacking away, and sometimes you can't even look. You kind of look away a little bit. You're like, damn, yo, she's going ham. And like, why? She's still going. This is 12 strikes already. He's been dead. She's still going. And then Joel stops her. It just feels it. The emotion comes out so much more when it happened that way, as opposed to how it did in the show. Other than that, the episode's a 9 out of 10. I thought that David episode was really, really well done. I thought they explored a lot of things that needed to be explored when it came to David. I thought what they glossed over was okay, and necessary in a way compared to the previous episodes that they glossed over so much. But then just that one change at the end, I didn't really like it too much, but it didn't do enough to ruin the episode for me. So for there we get to the finale. It was super, super close to the source material. There really wasn't much that was different. You get to see the Merle Dandridge is obviously still Marlene. It was just a perfect casting, right? Because she looks exactly like the character. I can't gloss over the beginning of the episode because that is by far, I'd say, the best 15 minutes of the entire series in terms of a storyline that they decided to explore that was not explored ever before, right? For the first time, we get to see, now, Matt, remember, this is spoilers. We get to see Ellie's mother, Anna, right? And we get to see what happened to her in her last moment. For the longest time, I'm pretty sure the majority of the public that has played the game and knows about the game and everything, they were holding out hope that Anna was still alive, right? When we first saw Abby in part two, we're like, holy shit, is that Anna? Like, what is she related? Like when the trailer first came out, like, is she related to Ellie? Like, is it Ellie's like, long lost sister? Like, what are we looking at here? Like, what's going on? Is that her mom? We didn't really know what was going on. And even when the game was over, we were like, oh, in part three, she's gonna meet her mom and all this and that. Like, she'll be able to, do whatever, get her redemption, and then she'll meet her mom and all that. If that's the case, this squashed it. I don't know if this is gonna be canon because a lot of the show technically isn't canon. A lot of the changes that they did were for the medium of TV shows, so I'm not sure if this is how the game will play out. But we got to see what became of Anna. So we get to see what it was that happened to her, how it is that she had Ellie. We get to see the knife, the origin of the knife. It belonged to, obviously, we always knew that it belonged to Anna, to Ellie's mom, but we got to see it. You get to see her hold it and use it as a weapon, right? So she starts off, she's running through this field, which is, by the way, this field, if no one has noticed, it is eerily similar to the field from part two when you get to that farm with Dina, and it's at the end of the game. You're walking back, and it's the last part of the game where it's very gray out. The field kind of looks dead. It's not as alive as it was when you were there before you left Dina. You get to that scene where you're seeing Anna running through this field. You see the tractor, you see the same gray house, right? The same kind of open field. And you go into the house, and the house looks eerily similar to that house as well, where you lived at with Dina as Ellie. It's just it was really probably an Easter egg. I'm not sure, but I thought that was really, really cool that I caught that. Ashley Johnson just nails the performance of what would have been Anna, right? And by the way, they use real babies for this. This is crazy. I mean, the whole scene, whether or not you're holding a baby, whether or not you have to do multiple takes, the baby's on the floor. There's an umbilical cord. Like, I understand it's probably makeup, but it's a newborn baby that she's holding. So kudos to the crew on how they did this, and whatever parents decided to sign off their kids for the show. I mean, thank you for that. I mean, thank you for allowing this scene to play out, because this was probably one of the most important scenes in the entire show. And it clarified a lot, right? It clarified Marlene's connection to Anna, right? As much as we heard about it and we knew that she was very close with Anna, we didn't know on what level, it was in terms of the interaction, the actual interactions between them. And it turns out that, they were best friends. They were great friends. They had known each other all their lives. And, Marlene walks up on Anna, and she's already had the baby in her hand. She has her wrapped up. And she says, you're gonna take this baby. She's not infected. She's normal. I got bit after she came out, which I don't know if that's necessarily the truth, right? I think she was in the womb still when Ellie got bit. And there's a bunch of theories out there saying that that's why she's immune, is because she was in the womb and the womb protected her, or adjusted how it affected her body. And she was getting the nutrients through the womb of whatever the cordyceps was. And they think that there's word going around that that's the reason why she's immune. She gives her to Marlene. She's like, please take her. Marlene's like, no, I can't do that. And she begs. Eventually Marlene agrees to take Ellie. But then there's a second request where Anna asks Marlene to shoot her, to kill her. And Marlene doesn't want to do it. She refuses, right? This is someone she's known all her life. But eventually, with enough convincing, and she comes inside and she ends it quickly. She doesn't even think twice. She comes in and she just shoots.
And that moment right there was kind of shattering for me because, again, this is a storyline that I was holding on to. So very, very riveting opening again to what is a great finale. You go through the fact that Ellie has this mutation of cordyceps inside of her that they need to analyze, but it grows in the brain. Cordyceps grows in the brain, and it means that Ellie has to die. And we finally get to see another scene, which is another very, very important scene when it came to Pedro's acting job as Joel. We get to see how the lengths that Joel will go to for Ellie, right? We get to see everything that Joel is willing to do to not lose another daughter, right? This is a man on the edge. If there's one thing Joel will never do again, is Joel will never go through that pain of losing another daughter. And he won't do it. And Ellie at this point is his daughter, right? He wants to teach her how to play guitar. He wants to go back to a farm. He wants to see her go to the moon, right? He wants to see her do all these things that she's wanted to do. And that's kind of the premise of this episode, is the fact that this needed to end on Ellie's terms. And Joel does it in a way that ends on his terms, right? And he takes control of a situation that he didn't have control over, because one of the things that he didn't have control over was Sarah's passing. He felt completely helpless and out of control, and he had no control over it. And he couldn't do anything to stop what was happening to her. So when he sees that he has a chance to stop this, stop the surgery that's going to kill Ellie, but get them a sample of the cordyceps infection that mutated inside of her, he doesn't even think twice, right? Even though Marlene is telling him that she knows what it means to lose Ellie more than anyone because she was so close to Anna. She says, doesn't matter. Send him out, take him to the outskirts, and give him a gun and some clothes and let him go. And if he tries anything, shoot him. Right? So that everything is going according to plan when it comes to the finale. Everything is just like it was in the end game. He takes his opportunity and he kills anything and everyone in his way, on his way to save Ellie. He gets to the doctor scene where he's at the surgery room and the doctor's there, and he grabs the scalpel and he's like, "You're not going to take her. I won't let you stop me. Think about humanity. Think about the lives we'll save." Doesn't matter. He shoots the guy point blank and tells everyone to unhook her, turn around, and get out of his way, right? Now, in the game, I killed everybody in that room. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how many of you guys did, but I killed everybody in that room. I didn't let anybody stay alive. Dude, I don't want no witnesses. In this case, he only kills the doctor, the head doctor, the surgeon, and he tells the other ones to turn around, the assistants to turn around, and he takes Ellie. He's gone on this rampage through the entire hospital. He's probably killed about 20 or 25 people. He's killed people that have surrendered and they've given up their guns, and he still shoots them, right? He's relentless at this point, and he's lost his mind. He's unhinged, right? And everything is in an effort to get Ellie back. So eventually he gets Ellie back. They get to the scene where, he meets Marlene downstairs, and it's exactly like in the game. He shoots her with the gun like tucked under Ellie's legs. He picks it up and shoots her. He goes and puts Ellie in the car. He goes back, and the iconic line, he says it with perfection. Marlene begs him. She's like, "Please, stop. It's okay. I'll let you go. Just let me live." And he goes, "Nah, you just come after her." Ends it right there. You can kind of see where Joel is coming from when he makes that decision. But then again, it wasn't his decision to make. And it's going to be controversial. There are going to be a lot of people that say it was the right decision. It's fine. Ellie's going to live a happy life. She's going to be great. She's come around eventually. She's just pissed right now. But it's not even just that. She asked Joel later on, "Swear to me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true. Swear to me." And he says it without hesitation, even though in the game, I thought the emotional impact of that scene in the game was much better. I thought it was much better. But now you're looking at this scene the way they did it in the game, and Joel doesn't even give it a thought. He just says, "I swear." Straight up, "I swear." I'm like, damn, bro, you didn't even think about it a little bit? You got to think about it a little more than that. But hey, to each their own. The show ended up being a huge success. ratings off the charts every time an episode was on, be it disappointing or not. It didn't matter. Everyone tuned in to watch this, and it was really really cool to see a game adaptation receive this kind of love, this kind of attention to detail, right? I mean, the environments are some of the best environments. The set design was some of the best I've seen in any show. If you're talking about really recreating the game for real life TV, they even got the vines that come off of the traffic lights correct. You know, they got those on point. They literally look just like the game. The way the vines grow in the game on the cars and everything, they nailed that, right? So it's like, it's really really great to see something get this level of attention to detail, and it's something that I'm looking forward to season two. I'm looking forward to them learning from feedback and from what they've attempted, learning what to do with the second season, and hopefully HBO orders some more goddamn episodes because 9 episodes was too little. It was the main reason why this season couldn't be perfect, is because it had 9 episodes. They needed more time to work with. You had an episode that was an hour and 20 minutes. You had an episode that was 45 minutes. You clearly saw a budget here in terms of time constraints and money that they had to spend on this show. But hopefully that's not a problem in the second season. And hopefully they learn from everything, and we come back a little stronger. Ellie's a better Ellie next year. Bella Ramsey does better. Pedro Pascal is a better Joel next year, right? So we'll see what happens. All in all, I thought it was a great attempt at adapting a game to the TV medium, and it was successful. And we'll leave it at that. Those were some of the things that I think the show got right and what it got wrong. It's a breakdown of each episode, but I really just wanted to break it down with you guys and let you know what my thoughts were, because I do know that I've been putting a lot of thoughts out there, and a lot of people have been echoing my opinions, and I've seen a lot of other opinions online, and they all have basis in fact and understanding for the source material. And people who played the game will understand. But if you're just watching it for the first time, I don't blame you if you freaking loved it, if you thought it was an amazing show. And I also don't blame you if you thought it was underwhelming and it wasn't, it didn't do everything it was supposed to, and it didn't hit you emotionally like the game did, or like you thought it would for the first time if you're watching it for the first time. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm gonna leave it at that. Definitely feel free to go down below and drop any comments, any ideas you may have about, things that happen, any Easter eggs you guys might have found, any interesting tidbits of information about, the development of this show and the production of it, maybe that you've heard from the Last of Us podcast. Feel free to drop that all down below. It was a pleasure talking for you guys. Talking with you guys will be awesome as well down in the comments. And like I said, we'll be back with that Hogwarts Legacy review, me, Brendan, and Show, next week. So stay tuned for that. And we're also thinking of dropping a Dead Space edit soon too. So be on the lookout for that. That's gonna be it for me. My name's Chris. This is Film and Gaming. It was awesome talking to you guys. Peace out.